Let there be sound. Welcome, everyone. It's so great to have you here, and a special welcome to Kari Tauring. When I knew I wanted to do a session on sort of indigenous land-based, earth-based practices from Europe, I asked Sarah, what's the largest percentage of folks you think we have? Are we going Celtic? Are we going Norwegian? She said. So I called Norway House and told them what I was looking for. And I called them, I emailed them, and multiple people responded to me, and they all said the same person, Kari Tauring, who some of you know has been on this journey of exploring her root culture, and I had such a great conversation with her over the phone, and I'm really excited that she was able to be here with us today to share her story with us as part of our own larger discussion that we've been having during Lent about exploring our own root cultures and our rootedness and the stories of our ancestors and their practices. So whether or not you are of Scandinavian heritage or not, I am not myself, but hearing about Kari's own journey and what she's learned and how it has shaped her own spirituality and self-understanding and sense of rootedness has taught me something as well and inspired something for me about exploring my own root culture. So thank you, Kari, and you'll hear a lot more about her story as we proceed. So thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for having me come. This is really an honor. It's easy to do things with crowds like this because everybody's got hooks to hang this on, and I go, oh yeah, sounds like my room. So I've got my little list. I wanted to start today with an invocation song, and it uses the runes. It's called Komme alle. That's come everyone, and it means to gather everybody together. Komme alle. Oh, now I'm gonna really need you to hold my. Oops. Yeah. Okay. So it goes, komme alle, and you can sing, komme alle singen Eyo, alle singen Eyo. So the Eyo, that is the elk rune, the rune of the antlered ones that came before everybody. So that would include the, the moose and the elk and the reindeer and all that. And then Gifu, and that's Gifu, that is Gifu or Gable, the rune of reciprocity. 2 stops of equal length, bound at the middle, Gifu. And then usually we use manas, the rune, for, that means community. That's 2 stops of equal length, bound at the middle this way, so that the little Gifu is in the middle, and then the big stocks hold that together, and that makes the rune for community. So we're gonna. You got it. No, it's really hard to when it starts spinning, you have to hold it. And she was like, "How is that gonna work?" So Gifu manas or manahim. When we are a single stav, right? Stav, single staff. Then we have all these little stavs as well. The rune for need and necessity is called naldis, and that's a big stav with a little cross piece here that is a little bit being held. And when you have need in community, that means people are somebody's holding someone else. It could be a parent holding a child. It could be my son last night holding up the Nordic ball by making all the soup for 200 people. It could be all these different things. And but now these, when we take the little stops and we put them in the middle, that's children and the elders and that kind of thing going in the center. But in COVID times, we couldn't make that room with each other, right? So we started using the younger Futhark manas, which is the oval above the head, like this. So, gifu manahem, gifu manahem, komme alle. Okay, now we're gonna do it all together. Are you ready? Ready. Alle singen ero. Gifu manahem. Komme alle. Again. Komme alle. Alle singen ero. Gifu manahem. You would like to sit here? Yes, I might tell you to hold this to my mouth. So come everyone, and so this is something that I put together in 2003 for a winter solstice thing at Lake Harriet Spiritual Community, and my friend in the dance community said, shouldn't we be dancing this? Of course. So we made it into a dance, and I'm not sure that we'll get up and do it because I think it will just stay settled. So as introduced, my name is Kari Tauring, and I grew up thinking I was 100% Norwegian because we had a mother-dominated household, and Dad just said, we're kind of German. But then when I got in junior high, I found out, well, Sherry is my cousin from my mother's side. And so, as you know, we can trace our Norwegian ancestors back to the 1600s, and everyone's done that. And so when I was in junior high, I thought, well, I'll do Dad's side, and that's when I found out I'm Latvian, not German. Our last name is Latvian, Tauring, and it means butterfly in Latvian. So, and we had a Latvian pastor at the church, my folks did, and he really opened up my dad's side for us a little bit. Then when I was in 1988 as an undergraduate at St. Thomas, I was interested in pre-Christian spiritual traditions and interested in my heritage and being the one of the only Norwegians in a sea of Irish Catholics. I was kind of known as that one gal who does that thing, that stuff. And so my linguistics teacher says, oh, have I got a great lecture for you. You're gonna really love it. And I said, great, because linguistics can be really like, and she went into it's the Indo-European, and that's the Indo-European language, and it's Proto-Germanic, and the Proto-Germanic, and then it's the lettering system, the runes, and she's like, and I was all like, so you don't know about the runes. I thought you were into that pre-Christian stuff, and I thought it's your heritage, and so I go to my grandma and my mom, and we're sitting there, and I say, well, Grandma, why don't we know about the runes? That's our heritage. And she says, well, that's pretty old stuff, Kari. It's pre-Christian. And I said, there were pre-Christian Norwegians. My veneer of Lefse, Lutheran, and Lutefisk, the three L's, were just so firmly fixed. And so my mom goes, we would have been Catholics first. And so here we are, I start peeking under the left side, So when my grandparents came, my grandfather came as a teenager to this country. And so I had an idea of myself as settler, that I knew this wasn't, Norway, that we are settling on land that had been cleared of people. But I always felt a little bit sort of, I don't know, like, there's that thing we think of where it's like, well, that happened way before my grandpa came, and it's like, did it though? and isn't it still happening? So that settler piece, kind of was interesting, to kind of work through. And then, in 2016, my friend who does genealogy, he likes to go on my dad's side, found my dad. Yeah, here's the Latvian and Luxembourg. That's my dad's father side, and then his mother's side. And by the way, you have an ancestor that came on the Mayflower. And I was like, oh, that's a new feeling, right? And my husband has two Mayflower ancestors. And in the back of my head, I'm like, hope they're not the same. I mean, I know it's several hundred years, but, and they weren't the same. So our boys have three Mayflower ancestors that they know of and that are traced. And so I took my first trip out to do Nordic traditional things in Portland, Maine, and felt that energy. And yeah, it is different. Colonizer energy is slightly different feeling in my body than settler energy. Just feels different. And so when I start my work, I usually start with a threefold horn, which is to hail those. And this is something that we've learned from the Edda poem called Havamal. And the horn then is a prayer tool that goes back to 20,000 BC is when we can trace the first horn. There's a woman in Lasso, France, before Scandinavia was even uncovered from the ice. And she's holding a horn with the 13 stag marks on it. And she's got her other hand on her womb. She's looking into the horn, and she was covered in red ochre. And the older women that I talked with about this, they all said, well, of course, the archaeologists who found it didn't know quite what it meant. And all the women said, oh, well, 13 moons and you're covered in red ochre and you're holding your womb. I wonder what that could be about. And then there was the idea that she was a pregnant figure, and all the older ladies said, nah, not with that kind of sag. That is a postmenopausal body if I've ever seen one, and I have. I'm like, oh, okay. So now that I'm at that place, I'm like, yeah, they were right. No matter what the size, it hangs a little differently. So that is our first sort of horn ceremony as depicted. In the Hagmal, it says that we hail the host, hail the guest, and hail those who came before us, or those who are no longer with us. And so when I hail the host, of course, first I'll hail all of you at the church, and thank you for hosting me here. And I also hail the Dakota on whose land we are living, our ultimate hosts who cared for this land so that we can live on it as well. And so then we say hail, hail. And then we hail the guests. And in many ways, that's all of us. We are all guests on this land, and we promise to be good guests. We look into each other's eyes and promise to be good guests in this space. I think back in the day, that was probably even more important just because of how many knives were in boots. But we promise to be good guests. And so we hail the guests. Hail! Hail! And then finally, we say, hail to those who came before us. Our parents and grandparents and all of those on whose shoulders we stand, those people who we have lost both recently and deeply felt losses. And so we hail those who came before. Hail. Hail. At the end of the session, then I'll blow these these prayers into the three worlds, the lower, middle, and upper worlds of Yggdrasil, which is one of the names of the world tree. But in the, let's see, where am I? In the Eddas, so Edda, how many people have heard of the poetic Eddas? A couple. So these are the Icelandic poems that were written down in runes and in Old Norse, and they are the preserved poetry of pre-Christian ancestors who Iceland Christianized by deal making. So they could see that in the year 1000 that there was going to be, that Christianity was going to be the thing you had to join in order to have trade and to be part of the global world. But the people wanted to keep their ancestral traditions living, and they're poetry people. This is all word magic and poetry. It's all part of that, all of that culture. And so they made a deal that they would become Christian for 1,000 years, and that the people could practice their own ancestral traditions in their homes without getting into trouble. And 100 years later, then of course that became broken. And so they wrote these poems down, and Edda in Old Norse means great grandmother. So these are great grandmother poems. And the first poem in great grandmother's poetry collection is the Volu Spå, the prophecy of the staff carrying woman. And the first thing the staff carrying woman says, "Yours did that all. Quieten down, you people." Like, yep, that's my grandma. Finding my grandmother in all of these things. And for the first 10 years of these studies, I had my grandmother with me to bounce things off of it. And I'd come back with some sort of highfalutin idea that I'd read in a book, and she says, "Well, that's a lot of hoopla for Norwegians." So she really honed my path. She really, really sort of shaped how things went for me and for my studies. And so in the Edda, then she says, "Kjós videk aller helga kinder, Mario minimo heimdalar. Virtua tekval for ver fyr til jafjorns bjöl fyr at our fremstoman. Quieten down and heed my words, give listening, I bid you, all you sacred folk, the biggest and the littlest, all kin of Heimdalar." One of the things that I started doing was translating the names of these gods and goddesses and places into English so that I would have an understanding of what they meant to the people who were writing these poems. And Heimdalar translates to the world body, or the body of or the home valley of the world body. So we are all connected in this way. And there's another Vårsball Hinskama, which is a smaller poem, and it talks about how we are Otter of the narrow mind. Otter who never left home needs to know how he's connected. And all of us as in you're connected by this and this and this and this, and you need to know more. Oh, you otter of the narrow mind. So she goes on, and ultimately it's like we are connected to everything. And that is a really important piece. Another part of sort of the mindset of my ancient people that held its meaning in my current, in my youth, was this idea that we were in nature and of nature, and that all the things that come from nature have to go back into nature. I didn't get to know my grandpa, because my mom's dad, because he passed away before I was born, but I heard so many stories about him. And mom says, why don't we sell the manure in town? And he says, oh no, everything that comes from the farm has to go back to the farm. You know, this idea of being so intimately connected. Apparently, he was the one who found all the wells in Polk County, Wisconsin, too. He was the miner. They would get the assayer in and he'd be like, and then they'd call ours. Dig here. And that doesn't mean anything in terms of not being a Lutheran. None of that had anything about scrapping our Lutheran identity. It had to do with deepening it and broadening it to me. And so, but it was easier for me to skip from Lutheran to the Ice Age, just, you know, because everything in between is so messy. So that has been part of my work, has been climbing up from there, back into my Lutheranism, back into these things. And so studying the saints and the saint days in Catholicism became part of my studies as well, which is something we've studied together. The Primstav perpetual calendar is something that I teach about at Norway House that's coming up this weekend. It saves these saint days and marks them for the people in Scandinavia so that they wouldn't miss church, because if you miss church on a saint day, you could be fined or worse. And it also preserved those land-based traditions, those agricultural necessities. Like, by this saint day, the ice ought to be pretty good. By this saint day, you're still out on the ice, it's your fault. By this, you know, all of these things, you know, and how do we prepare the field? How do we, why do we bury an egg and a juniper branch in the spring to bless the land? How do we do all of these different things? So those were, it's a mountain of wonderful study that I've been so privileged to be part of. But one of the things that I realized is that I had to decolonize my own thinking around these studies. When I was in college, the first thing I did when I started learning the runes, which is the Old Norse alphabet, the Proto-Germanic alphabet, it used to be the oldest rune inscription was on a comb in Denmark, bone comb, and it said Horja. And again, the archaeologist said, must be a man's name or something. And I just looked at it, I'm like, well, it means hair, yeah. Like a total joke, comb your hair. Some mom put it on there, I'm sure. And and now we have the oldest inscription in Norway from year 27 in Tyrifjord. They found, and it's just Idebera, a woman's name. Women in Norse culture were revered as holy, as having deeper connection to the understanding of the gods and the earth as a goddess, and the holiness of women was revered. And so even the early BCs, when Tacitus was writing about these Germanic tribes, and for some reason, it's the old women that they revere the most. It's like, yes, that's right. Always has been. So that was a mindset that I needed to shift. Another thing that we learned from the Eddas is about how time was developed. So I like to, there are these 3 norms, the Volva says, here's the ice and fire came into the center of Gunungagap, the gaping void, and creation happened through sound, and the sound was Ymir, this howling, roaring sound, and then Ymir became threefold tones, and those 3 sacred tones I will play on the horn at the end, but those three tones are available in any hollow tube. And so all of those sacred songs pass through all of the world and those sacred tones. And they are ba 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 ba. So you know those tunes from ba 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 ba, or you know them from ba 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 ba, you know, all these. And they are also the basis of many of the cow calls from the upper hills for generations, uncountable women who owned the cattle and the livestock up in the upper farms would say, "Kushida, kushida, come cows," and they would play those on their lures and they would sing them in through the fjords and through the woods and those sacred tones. And I also think of those sacred tones as, we like things in threes in Scandinavian culture. Threes and nines, we like threes and nines a lot. And so after the world was created, then the Volva in the world says, then come these women, wise and all things. Three of them living under the tree. Ur du hette Aina. Ur is one. Andra verdandi, the other verdandi. Skaro skido skuldaina trido. Scoring the runes in school is the third. Now, often people translate these women's names, these powerful names, to past, present, and future. But that isn't at all how they are translated into English. Urd means something more like primal law, or the layers of what is. So it isn't a past that is finished and done. It's a past that we continue to develop. A past precedence that we build on and that our children can then build on and all of the next generations can build on. Verdandi means that moment of turning, that moment of becoming. And so that's pretty much where we stay in Scandinavia. We're like right on the precipice of things that are becoming. And then skuld means debt. Past precedence, that which is becoming, and what we owe to the past, what we owe to ourselves. Also is a cognate of the word should. And people are like, well, I don't want to should. What? We have a goddess for should. And my grandmother used to say, oh, well, Kari, if you do what you should do, then probably it'll work out. It just keeps us on track of doing what we ought to do, what we owe to do. So I'm going to demonstrate it with the spindle. So we're all born with this spindle, right? We're all born with this stuff that came before us. And some of it is lumpy, and some of it is thinly worn, and some of it is in great condition. And we cannot unspin what was spun. But what we can do is change our relationship to what was spun. And then this is urd, right? And then we can hold the moment. So this little piece between the urd and the past and what we should do is called verdandi. So this is the moment. So being in verdandi is the same as be here now, really. Being in verdandi. And when the past is an active principle, so you can see how it springs up. And so all we need to do is hold on to the moment and draft out what we want the next spin to look like. And after we draft it out, we can let go of the present moment, and the past spins itself right up. So I'm going to just walk around and show that. Ur, Vedani, what we should do, Skud, and we just keep spinning and it's like, oh, should I stop? There's a little thin spot, there's a thick spot. Well, I think I should get going. So I'm just gonna spin it up. So we're never creating we're never creating the future. We're always creating good past precedents. And doesn't that take a little pressure off? In this Western mindset, we're always told we should be thinking about the future, 5 years, 10 years. What's your 10, 20-year plan? And okay, well, that's good, but not if you're a farmer living on a 45-degree angle on the side of your, you're just like, I don't know, but what I should do is make sure that there's enough fodder. You know, I should make sure the cows get milked. So then we moved to a place like the United States where we have, thank you so much. Yeah. Where some of us have lost our spindles, or the spindle got broken, or someone handed us a big pile of something and said, here's your future, kid, go for it. And you're just like, oh, that's gonna be a lot of work. What should we do? Well, I expect what my grandma would say is, well, if it's worth drafting out, then draft it out and add it to the spin. If it's not worth drafting out, find a different use for it, because everything exists because it has a use and purpose. And I said, even crabgrass? And she says, yeah, even crabgrass. And it's up to you to find out the use and purpose of everything that exists. That's been a really interesting lesson for me all these years. When there are some things that I want to count as completely useless, then I think, okay, well, what is the purpose for me? So, Urd Verdandi and Skud, they come onto the face of creation, and they change how time works. They give everybody a reason and a purpose called Urlag, this direction that we go. So what is in our Urlag to do? And that's what all of the poems are about, is the hero trying to find the maiden with wisdom and having to face fears and having to learn how to move through those fears of the unknown and fears that they didn't even know they had, and find the maiden with the mead of wisdom and of poetry and of resurrection. This idea of the wisdom of the mead of resurrection is part of this. How does the spirit live forever? So Ol means the spirit in Old Norse. Ol, Vili, and Vei, or called spirit, will, and holiness. So finding those pieces within the self, within the body, also is part of this path. Okay, so one thing I did when I was young is I started translating different words into Old Norse, just to see how the prayers would work. So instead of saying, the Lord said to thus and so, I translated it to Frere said, because Frere, the god Frere, means Lord. And so I started doing it. The spirit moved me, Odin moved me. Ooh, that feels creepy, but also interesting. So I'm just kind of doing this kind of moving these things through the Urlag, through the body. It has been a big part of the work. In Old Norse, there's lots of places we can go after we die, but almost everybody goes to hell. I love saying that one in church. Hel is a goddess of the underworld, and her name means whole. So if you go to Norway and you get whole milk, it'll say Helmelk. So head is where we go. Almost all of us will walk the road of death and come into wholeness with our urlag, moving into, and I said, well, there must have been some Norwegians in the Council of Nicaea if Jesus went to hell for 3 days, because I think I probably will too, you know, and just to get whole milk. So, so here we are. We have no future. We're all going to hell. What else can I say? So figuring out how my colonized brain was playing into this is something I want to touch on for sure. And the first thing I did when I learned the runes was I took them out of their given order. They're in a specific order. Fe, ur, stu, risas, meaning the runes shapes. Fehu, meaning domestic animal, domestic cow. Ur, meaning wild ox. Thurs, meaning giants. All of these things. And I took them out of the given order and put them in ABC order so I could memorize them. And it was not really until a friend of mine said, you really need to write a book about all the things you talk about around the runes. And I wrote a book in 2007. And I said, well, we really ought to do them in their order. And it took me just minutes to realize what a fool I had been to take them out of their order, because they tell a story. So that is an example of how my sort of westernized brain went in and said, okay, I need to learn these pieces, and so I'm gonna just put them in ABC order, like really went off full-fledged Roman on that alphabet, you know. I didn't even call it an alphabet. It's not, it's a Futhark. So another thing we learn about ourselves from the Eddas is that humans were made from trees. So that we ash and elm, men are made from ash and women made from elm, right? And all the different trees are symbolic within the poetry of people and kinds of people. And forests or groves in the poetry generally mean to congregating peoples, humans. And I thought about that a lot in terms of like how does that feel in my body? To think of myself as a tree. And so I was developed this this internal visualization of myself as the world tree. So I'd love to just kind of do a quick one with you guys about this. So we've got 3 roots, left foot, right foot, and then one down the middle. A 3-legged stool. You can milk on the side of a fjord if you've got a 3-legged stool. And these 3 roots go into the 3 wells of the world tree. One goes into Ur, das Brunnr, the well of Ur, the well of past precedence. And we pull that energy up, maybe say from your right, your left side, and pull that up from your left side. And then one going into Minnesbrunner, the well of world memory. And we pull that up. And then the 3rd root comes in, and that is going into Virgomir, the roiling cauldron of creative force, the creation and destruction, that sort of the black hole in the Milky Way. So we've got those 3 roots in. And then we have ice on one side and fire on the other, and we move those 3, and that is all of Helheim. Nifhel, Muspel, the wholeness of fire, the wholeness of ice coming together in the underworld, see? And that's all the sort of below the hips part. And then you move it up into the guts. I like to think of that as the Svartalfheim, though, the dark elves, the underground elves, who do all the mining, and they take the garbage out of the system. So Svartalfheim, and then Ljosalfheim, I put in the lungs and the good bacteria. The light elves are in charge of the plants and animals of the world. And so we think of the lungs as the forest of the body, and the light elves working within there, trying to get all the scraping all the pollution off the trees from all the fire the smoke fire and all the different things, you know, and the good bacteria and the light elves and the dark elves work together in the spleen, taking the old cells away and creating the new ones for the body. So they work together. And then the center in the heart space, that's Mannheim, that's Mom's, that's human home. Our home is where our heart is. So those are the three middle worlds, lower worlds, the middle worlds, and then the three upper worlds. Well, for me, it was easy to think about where is Jotunheim, the giant's place, because that would certainly be the occipital ridge underneath there in that Jotun brain, that ancient of days brain that gives us the fight or flight, that makes sure that we don't have to remember, oh, it's time to breathe. You know, things that go and things that can hijack us when we are uncertain. Right? So I think of that as the Jotunheim, Jotner there. And that incidentally is where all the heroes have to go into Jotunheim to find the wisdom. Yeah. So Jotunheim, and then Vanheim, when Van are gods and goddesses with the Freyr and Freya, the lady and the Lord, the icon of, it was the 80s. We had a lot of sort of cool brain theory back then, you know, but this being the brain that can see the gestalt, the whole of things, and so requires both male and female energies to function properly. And then the last side I think of as Asgard, where the Aesir are the gods that everyone knows from the comics, Odin and Thor and those, but a host of goddesses whose names most people do not know. There are more named goddesses in the Eddas than there are gods. And it is according to Snorre Sturluson, who made the Poetic Edda's companion, he says this is women or female characters represent the impetus to act, and male characters represent the manifestation of those actions. And so there's more stories about the manifestation that got carried on, because everybody knew who was underneath there saying, hadn't you better, you know, everyone knew who everyone's grandma was. And those were some of the stories that didn't get passed because everyone knew them. And so it was as though they didn't exist. Oh, but I have uncovered so many of them, and it is another hour or two. So this idea that we're made from trees, that we can embody the world tree in ourselves, that became the point of action for my spiritual life, and was to be in my body and not trying to go out there and see what's out there. And there are modern shamanistic practices that tell you to just lay there and drum yourself out of your body and find the ancestors. And I went to one and I said, excuse me, whose ancestors are we going to find? Oh, well, well, I know where mine is, and my grandma's right in here. So I just thought I better stay put in my body and not do that. But what gets us not out of the body, but in deeper to the body and gives us that feeling of unity, of being, is the dancing. And the dancing, and we just had our Nordic ball last night, and I didn't get home till 11 because I was cleaning the kitchen. So, but it is the spinning. You know, it is this 3-point spin that we do in an even direction. It's skiing. It's skating. It's walking on the ice. It's being in stav with our own body as the staff. Being in stav, and they say you have to, in Scandinavian, you have to svikt. That's the absorption into the earth. svikt. And then you go deeper, ting, down, down, or up, svikt, ting, kraft, svikt, ting, kraft, svikt, ting, kraft. And it's down, down, or up, and you have this motion, hips and shoulders in alignment in stav. And someone said, well, don't you ever move your hips? I'm like, oh, you'd fall down on the ice if you did that. That's not in our culture. Cool and fun, but not in our culture. So all of these Nordic movements, Nordic motion, they all have poetic connections within each of these, all of these different poems about how we're supposed to move in the world as part of the nature and going into the nature. So let's see, how much time do I have?
It's 10:32, we have till 10:45.
Woohoo! All right, let's see what else I talked about. Yeah. Okay, questions. I bet there are some questions. Yeah.
I like to think my knowledge is broad and I know things, but when someone talks about something, I realize my knowledge is shallow. You know, all Minnesotans, we know runestone, and we think we know what a rune is, but from your discussion, I think there's a lot more to a rune than what we understand it to be.
Yeah, so the runes are, and it's, Sigurd Olsen wrote a book called The Runes of Nature, and you read that one, probably it's up in your cabin somewhere. Rune, so the word, I'll just do a real quick. The runes, rune is a word that is Indo-European in its origin. Ru, in India, in Vedic tradition, Rudra is the nature god of howling, who has a red beard and carries a hammer. And I'm like, oh, I think we have one of those. Ru is also secret or whispered mystery in Proto-Germanic. If you are a runo, you are one who knows the secrets of nature and secrets, and they come out of nature. Every single rune shape you can see in a tree. That was one of the hoopalas that Grandma says, well, I don't think so. I'm like, what do you think they had rune sets? And if they had a question that they might pull a rune, and my grandma says, I don't, yeah, that's a lot of hoopala. You know, it has knowledge, deep knowledge has to be more accessible in the moment. And so that is where I thought, yes, that is a modern idea. What isn't a modern idea is grounding and centering and looking in a tree and finding the symbols emerge from our cousins, the trees, with whom we share a soul part, the fair soul part with all of nature. That's another lecture too. So rune is a shape, it's a sound, it's a meaning. It is also one who speaks them or sings them. And it's a word that was shared. Do we have any Finns in the audience? Yes, wow, a Finn who raised their hand. That you must have been in America for a while. They always say, you know, a Finn likes you if they're looking at your shoes instead of theirs. But it's runo, the runos of it's a shared word. So Vainamoinen is the famous runo of the Kalevala, and he sings the world into being, and the word magic and the word speaking. And it sounds like in the beginning was the word, and the word was God. It sounds so familiar. And it is these ideas of how powerful word is. And so Vainamoinen was a famous runo. And the runo poems are these beautiful I don't remember all the rest of the words, but it's very powerful rhythm. And I will be singing some of those at the happy hour at Norway House. I don't know if I can advertise that here. Thursday, this coming Thursday from 4 to 8, pop on down. Norway House has a beautiful, the Weavers Guild has got a beautiful Scandinavian presentation that they put together. Warp weighted loom in the middle of the room, and like my friend Melba has some Melba Granlins, and there's a loom with that's a small version of the Dagia Ludolda, which is a poem that talks about the grisly loom of war. So I'll be talking about those pieces and singing from there, and also the Finnish and Swedish Easter traditions and rituals. I'll be teaching about those and things. So yeah, so runes are a lot more than that, and that's why they were banned. And that's why they were banned. They had a resurgence. So Norway was devastated by the Black Plague in 1340s. This ship landed in Bergen. The whole crew was dead. All the fleas on the animals brought the plague to all of Norway. At least a third of the population died. Entire towns emptied out. It was devastating. And it ruined their economy, it ruined their political system, it ruined everything. And so then Denmark could easily come in and supply people to run the country. And so Norway was kept as an underdeveloped colony of Denmark for 400 years. This is something still referred to in Norway as the 400-year night. Though in Denmark, they call it the 400-year union with Norway, right? So yeah, colonized or colonized, I don't know, there's a different perspective on all these things. Anyway, so then in the 1600s with Protestantism, that's when they started burning fiddles in the streets. Fiddles caused the dancing caused the ecstasy. Ecstasy leads to no good, especially in a people who you want to suppress. So people who knew runes had their tongues cut out. Fiddles were being burned in the middle of the streets. It was devastating. And so when Norway got its independence, and I'll be doing another happy hour at Norway House in May to talk about Norwegian constitution and those histories. But yeah, so the idea of runes and these things came back up, and the old stuff, and they're trying as a country to gather their identity again, and what is different about us. That's when the bunad, the folk costume movement came in. That's where Nynorsk was born. A scholar, well, he wasn't really even a scholar, just a country linguist. He went all over Norway gathering dialects and created a new Norwegian language that wasn't the Danified language called Nynorsk, which is still required in Scandinavia, or in Norway. But you know, so then the Nazis came in, right? And Nazi occupation was hard in Norway. And so all of those things that the Nazis glorified and took, like runes and like the poems and like all of these symbols and things, and they misappropriated them and twisted them to mean some sort of superiority. And the Norwegians suppressed that piece again because they didn't want any identification with that stuff. Yeah, so long story short, yeah. Runes. Any other questions? I can take 10 minutes.
What languages are you singing? You're singing those songs?
Yeah, so I sang from the Eddas, is Old Norse, and it's closer to Icelandic, which is one of the reasons why I don't speak fluent Norwegian, because I'm like, well, I should probably study Icelandic and Old Norse, and then there was also language trauma in our family. Mom and her brothers and sisters were encouraged to not learn Norwegian. And then they heard it from their mom and dad, who had this unique Tronding and Sonding, Trondheim and Sandefjord dialects that they put together. And that's what they spoke at home. And so when mom went to learn Norwegian, she was scolded for not having proper bookmål. And this is something that a lot of her friends experienced. And she said, you know, I can't even remember now how it sounded when mom and dad spoke it. And so there was this, so there's language trauma as well, which happens to everybody who gets a break, a hard stop to root culture. That is one of the reasons why root culture reclamation is so important. It's so important. During the oh, I'm sorry, my brain is not focusing on it. No, yeah, I don't know. During the pipeline demonstrations, Standing Rock, they had right there on their website, white allies, do not come here to find your spiritual roots. These are not them. Please find your own so that you can come filled to us as allies that aren't needy for what we have. And so that has been a really strong push for me to go deeper and move it back up. Well, what happened during Catholicism? Well, what happened during Lutheranism? Well, why did Lutheranism stick so well? And what are the hooks, you know, that made it move into our culture here? What are the things, you know, and this is for everybody's self-study that we have to do. And it's always self-study. It's always about me and my perspective and my part of the weave that comes from the spin that I'm making. And my piece goes into the tapestry. And I want my piece to be whole and healed and strong. And so that's what this work really is all about. Yeah. Yeah, so thank you.
Getting through the final workflow, just want to make sure people know if they want to learn more from you, Kari, you mentioned a couple of things coming up at Norway House, and you mentioned a book.
Yeah, so I have 3 books. Of course, I just finished a tour, and so I don't have very many copies. I don't have any copies with me, but here are the examples, and they are available on my website, karitauring.com. The first one is the first rune book on the Elder Futhark before what we call Viking era. By the way, Viking, okay, we need to drop that. It means pirate. It means those people who went pirating. It doesn't mean a whole culture of people, right? Anyone could have that job. So just.
Are these available in Norway?
These are, they haven't been carrying my books, because Inga Brunson's has done some things. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're doing. Oh, I see, but they're available on my website, and, I will be getting more into anyway. But this is the 24 Elder Futhark that I first started learning. And that was first published in 2007, and then this is the revised edit in 2016. Then I wrote in 2010 this Bolestad manual, which is out of print, but there is a free PDF you can download on my website. And this talks about Bolestad is what I started to call the self-study program that I began working with in 2003. And it literally means the staff-carrying woman's staff. Like, what is this stuff? And what is this? So it's very cosmological and esoteric, and there's like, it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. And then in 2023, I wrote this book that I'll be reading from at the happy hour called The Day Begins at Sunset. It's a poetry book based on my Primstav studies and then the sudden stop to those studies with the pandemic and the uprisings. And so this is the chronicle of that time for me. And then last year just published this book on the younger Futhark, and it's called The Runes, A Pandemic Journey. Because the younger Futhark is a lone kind of alphabet. It dropped all of the first two runes of the first string, joy and reciprocity, were dropped. And this is something that started in around the 700s. As the Viking era, there was climate change, there was globalization, there was Christianity pushing in, there were a lot of similar issues, diseases and those kinds of things as well, that we were facing. And so I thought, well, I guess I better study it. And so it's an embodiment. Each chapter starts out with a stretching with it, and then it's got the poems that relate to it, and then it's got animal exercises that relate to it, and then at the end there's an embodiment exercise again. So that'll be one that you might want to take a look at too. Thanks. All right, thank you. All right, so there is a prayer song that we can sing, and it's so everyone kind of. And we'll do it call and response. And this is what happened when Sigurd, the hero, got across those difficult fire and all those things and woke the maiden with the maid. And she sings this when she wakes up for the first time. It's like this. Hail day. Hail day, hail you sons of day, hail you sons of day, hail night, hail night, hail you daughters of night, hail you daughters of night, with kind eyes, look upon us here. Look upon us here, and grant us speed, and grant us speed, and victory, and victory. Hail the gods, hail the gods, hail the goddesses, hail the goddesses, hail Earth Mother, hail Earth Mother. Who gives to all, who gives to all, wisdom and good speech, wisdom and good speech, we ask of you, we ask of you, and healing hands, and healing hands, in this life, and healing hands, and healing hands in this life, in this life. Here we go. All right, so I blow all these good prayers and good wishes into the lower, middle, and upper worlds of the world tree, which of course is us. Oh, I have some CDs. No one ever buys CDs anymore, so if anyone wants my CD, I will find.
What are they at?
They're called Nick and Bear. So yeah.
Is it music or?
All right. Okay. I'll give you. I'll give a whole bunch of that. Cheerios. But yeah. So
Is it songs?
Yeah, songs and stories and poems. You share with your friend, kids like it. It's got the oldest known ritual song on the.
That's German.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
It's not, yeah, that one's German, so there's Norwegian, German, English, Finnish.
All right.